whatever you do, don't fall asleep. Because today, we're talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984. Let's do it. What's going on, y'all? Foos here, and today, we're going to talk about A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984. Before we jump into it, though, I do just want to say a big thank you to anybody out there who's been helping out the channel, anybody who's watched any of the videos, shared any stuff on social. I see you, and I really appreciate you. I'm trying to make 2026 a fun year here on the channel, and I can't do it without y'all's help. So, again, big thanks there. But let's go ahead and dive into this one. So, Nightmare on Elm Street was released in November of 1984. This movie would be written and directed by the great Wes Craven, who up to this point was known mostly for films like The Hills Have Eyes, Last House on the Left. And, this would be, I think, by far his greatest success once this one would come out. This would also be the greatest success to this point for New Line Cinema, who would have produced this film, and up to this point had been mostly a distributor in the industry. And this would kind of put them on the map and give them a little bit of respect in that realm, and earn him the nickname as the house Freddy built. So definitely a massive success that right out of the gates with this movie. We would get performances in this one from Robert Englund, obviously, as the iconic Freddy Krueger character, and great performance here by him. We would see Heather Langenkamp as Nancy, who would be our final girl in this one. We would get an introductory performance from a young Johnny Depp as Glenn, who's Nancy's boyfriend, lives across the street. And, some other performances throughout that are kind of cool. Primarily for me, I like seeing Lynn Shay in this one as the high school teacher. That's really cool. So this one, though, would follow Nancy and her friends in Springwood, small town there, and they are one by one starting to experience these dreams that all seem to feature one consistent element, and that's this burned, creepy man in a dirty fedora and a green and red Christmas sweater with knives for fingers by the name of Freddy Krueger.
This is God.
He would stalk them throughout their dreams early on and then slowly start to attack these kids and kill them off. As we quickly learn, if he attacks you in your dreams and you die in your dreams, you die for real. So this is, you definitely don't want to fall asleep after you start having dreams with this motherfucker in them. As the movie goes on, we learn a little bit about Freddy, that he's not just some dream killer, dream demon, but actually a real man rooted in the past of this town, who was a notorious child murderer, child predator, and the town folk, the parents of the current generation that we're watching suffer through these dream scenarios, took justice into their own hands, and they trapped Freddy and roasted him like a Christmas goose. So, as we learn through the movie, this is Freddy's revenge on the town of Springwood, essentially. He's coming back for the next generation in their dreams for what the parents did to him. So, that's what we got on this one. Pretty wild, pretty broad plot, and definitely unique for a slasher film up to this point. But we'll go ahead and we'll transition over to some positives on A Nightmare on Elm Street. Alright, y'all, so let's go ahead and dive into some positives here. Now, kind of like I alluded to there, one of my first positives I'm going to point out on this one is just that unique premise and approach that this movie took to a slasher film. I mean, the idea that this killer is not a man of flesh and blood that's coming after you like you're used to seeing in this type of a movie. He's waiting till you fall asleep and you're at your most vulnerable, and then he's choosing to attack you there. And it's not just a dream. You can't just wake up, because if this motherfucker gets you, you're done. I mean, it's a fucking awesome premise. And at no point can anyone fight sleep forever. That's one of the, the things that we always see, in this movie, and as it translates throughout the rest of the franchise, is just that no matter how hard you try, no matter how long you try to fight it, eventually you're going to succumb to sleep. You have to. We all do. And he'll be there waiting for you. So, love that unique premise, and it makes for a terrifying slasher villain here, especially in this first film. Moving on to my next positive that I'll point out here for Nightmare on Elm Street is the score that we get from Charles Bernstein in this movie. It's an incredible job at creating atmosphere throughout this movie, in particular in those dream sequences. Synthesizer going all day long, but it creates this overall, as atmosphere is the only way I can think to describe it, that you get. It feels like it puts you in this dream space and has an eerie tinge to it at the same time, but and it's just phenomenally done. I love the sound score to this original Nightmare on Elm Street movie, as well as the creepy ass little children's rhyme that we get, you know, the 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you thing. That's awesome.
2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your door. 5, 6, grab your crucifix. 7, 8, gonna stay up late. 9, 10, never sleep. I'm so scared.
Big fan of the music in this movie and everything that it adds, in particular into what it adds in the dream world and the dream sequences that we get in this movie. So, next positive I'm going to point to is Nancy as our final girl. And, you know, you could look at the whole thing two different ways as far as her acting performance that we get from Heather Langenkamp. That's not necessarily as much what I'm talking about as a positive here, because there are some moments that I'll listen to where people will criticize the acting. It could be better. But I just like the way that she as a character approaches her situation throughout this movie. She's not in any way backing down. You know, she especially towards the end, I mean, she's seeking out information about Freddy. She's trying to learn about her enemy and her attacker and all of this, and ultimately to prepare herself for what we see her do in the final act of this movie, which is go after Freddy proactively.
Where are you? Where are you, Krueger? I know you're here.
You know, she is willing to fight, and at the end, ultimately gets rid of Freddy because she's defiant in her just willingness to be fearless. She's just not going to be afraid anymore. So the way that Nancy approaches this whole situation, she makes for an incredible final girl, and probably one of the better ones that you can point to throughout this era of slasher movies. At least for me, she's a big positive, Nancy the character. Moving on to my next positive that I'm going to point out here, and by far probably the biggest positive that I'm going to point out, is just the character of Freddy and the performance that we get from Robert Englund. Everything about Freddy in this movie and the way that it's done is phenomenal. And you can talk about Freddy as a character over the course of a franchise versus talking about him in this movie, and I feel like it's two separate conversations. And as we talk more about more Nightmare movies going forward and everything, we'll definitely get into a lot of that. But for this one, just looking at Freddy from the original Nightmare on Elm Street movie, holy shit, dude is terrifying. I mean, those early dream sequences where you're first introduced to him, and you don't see much. They're really good at keeping him in the shadows and having him just being this lurking presence. But what you do see of him and what does come out of his mouth, and the way Robert Englund portrays every little mannerism about this character in this first movie, it's nightmare fuel, no pun intended. I'll point out my favorite scene is the chase that we get with Tina when Tina wakes up and she's lured outside by the whispers of her name here and there, which that even in and of itself, the way that they do that is fucking awesome. So subtle. And once we get Tina outside and she's in the alleyway and we get Freddy introduced You see the first shot of him coming out of there, and the long-armed shot that everyone's seen a bunch of times. It's iconic as hell. And it's just the way he chases her through that scene is fucking incredibly terrifying. We get, some little bit of campiness that shows us his sense of humor in a dark way that you get on display in that first scene as well. But it's not too much, cutting his own fingers off just to show her, I don't, little things here and there like that still show you like, okay, this guy's got a dark ass sense of humor. But again, it's not over the top yet at this point. He's definitely more menacing than funny. Yeah, that's my favorite scene, I think, from this movie with Freddy is that Tina stalking and killing scene there. And everything that's done with that. Just when we don't see Freddy even, he's terrifying because the way that Tina is portrayed moving about the bed initially and then all around the room and up across the ceiling, and it's everything about that scene is Freddy's greatest components all in one for me. It's all the great things about A Nightmare on Elm Street kill and everything about Freddy that I love. So love that scene and love Freddy as a whole in this movie. Absolutely phenomenal. But that's what I got on the positives for it. I'm going to go ahead and we'll transition over now to the small amount of things that I'm going to say negative about this movie. All right, y'all. So as I said, not a lot negative about this movie for me, but there are a couple of things I'm going to point out that I'm not the biggest fan of. So I find myself wanting to kind of yell at the screen sometimes when I watch this movie because of the parents in Springwood. They are starting to see all these things happening in the town, and their children are telling them that it's this man in their dreams, and they're describing him with great detail. These parents know what they did in the past. They know Fred Krueger was a real person. So I don't understand as a parent how you're watching your child tell you, hi, I'm being stalked in my dreams by this man that wants to kill me with knives for fingers, and his name is Freddy Krueger, and he's badly burned, and he's wears this hat, and look, I pulled this fucking hat out of my dream, here it is. And they still just want to deny and ignore and just, I guess, try to cover up what they did in their own minds for their own sake, I guess. I don't know. But those characters, the parents in this movie, just piss me off to no end for that point. At some point, you would think your parental instinct to want to protect your child, you're going to believe them and then, be honest with them. And then, granted, Nancy's mother does eventually tell her what's going on. But she tells her this in hopes that it's just going to get her to go to sleep. Not because she believes that Freddy Krueger has actually come back for them. It's nauseating. I'm really not a big fan of the parents in this movie. But moving on to the last thing I'll point out on the negative side. And that's the ending of this movie for me. I don't enjoy what we get at the end of this. I mean, I like Nancy's ending was what I'll consider it, where, she has her moment with Freddy where she tells him, I'm not afraid of you anymore, and she basically takes the power out of Freddy and gets rid of him at this point. Everything up to that, I'm perfectly good with. I love it. But the ending that we get with the eerie, we're back in a dream world, all of a sudden everybody's back alive, but then we quickly realize, like, shit's a miss here because the car's not doing what it's supposed to, and here goes the top's up, and it looks like Freddy's sweater, and we get this ending that implies, oh shit, we're back in a dream here, he's back, so everything ends on a note to imply everyone got fucked here, right? So if this was just a standalone movie, I wouldn't see any issue really with that at all. I mean, I'm quite fond of a movie that ends on a down note sometimes like that. I would not have been opposed to this ending being, oh, Freddy wins. At the end of the day, you can't get rid of him. He's eternal. He'll last forever in your dreams, and eventually he's going to get you. Cool with that. But then we get subsequent sequels afterwards where, particularly with Nancy, still a character that's around and going. And I don't know. I just don't like the way that the movie ends, knowing what we get going forward with continued story and all of that. And I'm not sure that they knew that this movie was going to have sequels at the time. So that's a fair counterpoint to what I'm saying, obviously. But when I watch this movie, for what it's worth, I just don't enjoy the ending. I would have liked something to perhaps just end it, like piggybacking off of what we get with Nancy's conclusion and everything like that. And if you want to plant some seed that Freddy's still out there at the end or something, that's fine. But the way we get everyone's just brought back, and then all of a sudden, oh shit, the car's Freddy, I guess, and we're about to get carried off to whatever's about to happen. I don't know. I just don't like it. But that's all I got on negatives for it. I'm going to go ahead and drop a couple final thoughts, and we'll get out of here. All right, so a couple final thoughts I got on this one. This is a personal one to me, but I'll always laugh to some extent every time I come back to watch this movie because I'm reminded of a story within my family. I have an older sister that saw this movie. Don't know exactly how old she was, probably too young to see it, but saw Freddy for the first time, and it did its job and created nightmare fuel to the point to where my sister did not want to sleep for a very extended period of time. So I always found that to be a funny story growing up that I would hear as a kid, and every time I go back and watch Nightmare on Elm Street, I'm tickled to remember that. But yeah, last thing I would point out on this one is just this is a great first installment for an awesome slasher franchise. I mean, absolute home run out of the park here, success as far as this movie goes from every aspect. And, you know, introduced us to, again, a young Johnny Depp, which is always a funny thing to look back at on this one. Overall, this movie is one that I'll always come back to fondly. I'm going to say if I'm going to rate it, I'd say 4 out of 5 on this one for me. But this is a classic and one of the better and stronger Nightmare on Elm Street films over time to this day. One that has constant rewatch value. And if you're watching if you're going on any slasher movie kick, a Nightmare on Elm Street's going to be one that's definitely got to be in the rotation somewhere. But that's all I got on this one. So we're going to cycle back to our Halloween 2 review coming out next. And then I think that's how we're going to play for a little while. I'm going to have some fun with these 3 franchises here and kind of just cycle through them all and have a little fun with that. And then do some little fun ranking videos at the end there. But as always, if you've stuck around this long, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me. Greatly appreciate it. And share the channel with some horror fans out there if you wouldn't mind. And again, be on the lookout for the next one. See ya.